You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm your host, Doug Thorpe. Today, we're going to continue our journey meeting with business owners and entrepreneurs and those who have gone out there and made a difference in the world. My guest today is no different. Her name is Melanie Lippman. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And where are you located?
I am in New York, about an hour outside of Manhattan.
Okay. Great. And are you native of that area?
Yeah. Well, I'm from New York, from Queens, so I grew up 20 minutes outside of the city. So, but children make you move. Bigger backyards.
Expanding boundaries. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Melanie is going to talk to us about the idea of image consulting, and in a social media world, if you own a business or you're representing a brand, the image that you yourself project has a lot to do with it. So as is a bit of a custom here, Melanie, could you first, before we get into the details, could you give us a little bit of backstory and help us know your journey and where you came from and what inspired you to do what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So I was born with what my clients say with the fashion gene, something that they all think that they're lacking. So I grew up, my family owns an accessory store, and I was put to work probably when I was like 4 years old. Probably even earlier, but that's like the first memories. And something that I really realized is that when someone felt confident in what they were wearing, they would go do anything. But when they didn't feel like they were wearing the right thing, or they felt frumpy or just like inappropriate, they kind of didn't want to go. So I really quickly picked that up, and I just loved helping people find that confidence and finding that desire to go play bigger. And it's something that I kept with me for my whole entire life. So when I needed to take electives in high school, or they were always fashion related. And then I ultimately decided to go to the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York and studied fashion merchandising. And then I studied actually cosmetics and fragrance marketing. And I went and worked for designers for about 10 years. So I sold very expensive, highest of luxury, worked with Bergdorf Goodman, Neiman Marcus, Harrods, was very young. I was in my mid-20s and was all of a sudden found myself in these situations where I kind of felt like I didn't belong. Like, it's like, I'm sitting at this table, what am I doing? And I found myself on this hamster wheel of how do I show up? What do I wear? How do I become appropriate? And I was trying everything. And I grew up, obviously, with a mom who had a very strong foundation of know your colors, know what looks good on you, stop wearing trends, just focus on what's right for you. And so when I kind of found myself in the stuck position, I was like some of us do, maybe I should go listen to what mom said and see if that really is the answer. So I kind of took some time to figure out what my own personal brand was when it came to getting dressed. So when I needed to go into these meetings, when I needed to go to Europe for 10 days with a carry-on suitcase, when I needed to go to a friend's birthday party, I just knew what I needed to wear. Like, it didn't become this big thing and something that really brought simplification into my life. So then when I ultimately ended up having my son and decided to leave that corporate job, I became super passionate about figuring out how to take my own formula to work for people with all different shapes, sizes, backgrounds, lifestyles. So I went back to school and got a degree in image consultation and color consultation. So I really can help other people really find their own unique personal brands. And then throughout the way, picked up a neuro coaching certification, because as we know, when we have to go play bigger, mindset sometimes has to have to shift with that as well. So that's kind of the long and short of how I got to be where I am right now.
I'm a couple of thoughts flashing through my mind. I'm old enough to be able to remember the days I was a banker in my early career, and we still wore suits then. And classically we had the navy suit, the white shirt, and the burgundy tie. That was kind of the uniform of the day most of the time. And if we want to take a page out of Steve Jobs' book, if you just had that's what you could come up with every day, and it would be perfectly acceptable. There wasn't necessarily a competition to change your ties or shirts, or in the case of the ladies, the jackets and blouses they were wearing and things like that. We had a senior executive who was kind of our chief administrative officer, which put HR reporting to him. He actually put together a manifesto about proper dress and image, and he went so far as to kind of get back to your point, quit worrying about trends, quit worrying about, the mode of the day, but find your own brand. And he used the example for the guys. If you think you like wearing cufflinks, well, get started, get used to it, because, having that chunk of hardware on your arm is kind of weird if you're sitting at a desk trying to do something. But his point was, whatever it is, practice it, get used to it, and get very comfortable in that. And if it doesn't somehow work for you, move on, find something else. And of course, the world changed and we stopped doing all that. And then it became more of a business casual. So I want to, I guess, lead off with that question. To the extent the whole world is incredibly casual nowadays, where do you start with helping people with that story?
So it was like pre-pandemic was the business casual kind of came to be, and no one really explained what that was or put a definition to it. For men, it was a little bit simpler, where it was like, okay, you don't have to wear a full suit. You could wear a blazer, and you could wear slacks, or maybe it's a polo shirt. But for women, it was like all bets are off. And it kind of is, people liked the idea of giving people the decision to choose and the freedom to choose. People don't like making choices, especially when there's a fear that they may do it wrong. Like, they like to know have a choice of what to eat for dinner. But like, if they're going to a restaurant that they've never been, from an ethnicity they've never eaten, they want someone to tell them, just order this, it's going to be good. So it's the same thing with our clothes, is that there really is this lack of this is how to do it. And people want some direction. So one of the things that I really love teaching my clients to do is to figure out what actually makes them feel confident in their clothes, because it's the same thing with giving a speech. You can't give someone else's speech powerfully. It's the same thing why a subscription box, a personal shopper. It's great to fill a void if you don't know what you're looking for. But if you don't have the words to articulate what your values are, the messages you want your clothes to send, what makes you feel good in your clothes, and all of the things, like, it's just basically shooting in the dark and putting it in someone else in the driver's seat when it comes to how you're showing up. So once you get really clear of what makes you feel good in your clothes, then you can adjust the formality. It's like, I just need these two things to happen. Like you mentioned, cufflinks. It's like, well, I like the color burgundy, or I like the color navy blue, or I don't like baggy pants, or I like to wear a sneaker, or I like to wear a loafer. Once you know what direction you're going into, it can be like, okay, I need to dress up a little bit. I'm going to wear this. I need to dress down a little bit. So the first step is really getting crystal clear on that. And then we can adjust the formality, knowing the situation that you need to go to.
I'm going to start kind of from the top down. In your experience with the clients you work with now, are they still operating in larger businesses that have sort of unwritten dress codes or unwritten expectations?
Yes and no. A lot of my clients are females that worked in male-dominated fields. And so to get them to where they needed to be, they needed to follow those unwritten guidelines, where, wear beige, wear navy, wear black, blend in, don't let your clothes speak louder than you, don't speak until spoken to, kind of like the learn the rules until you start breaking them. My clients typically come to me when they're ready to break the rules. When they're like,
Gotcha.
you know what, like, that worked, that got me to a certain place, but now I want to do things differently. So whether they are still in, let's say, a larger law firm, or they're the CFO of a company, or they're the CMO, so they're in marketing and they're like, I should be a little bit different than everyone else. How do I do that? Or they've decided maybe to leave that and go off on their own, and maybe they're going to be a consultant, a coach, or maybe start their own business. And that's where they're like, now it's for me to figure out who me is, as opposed to kind of living by everyone else's rules.
Yeah. I like that. Follow the rules until you can start breaking them. Not sure I heard that idea voiced quite that way, but that's a good one. Have to remember that. Well, so what is the usual profile of those who reach out and ask for your help?
It usually is someone who has found themselves either not wanting to go to the thing or going to, let's say, a big event, a conference, or traveling out for work, and it just feels hard and it's getting in the way. Or some of my clients have come to me because they've realized they've gotten passed up for a promotion, whether it is they haven't made partner and they've seen other people around them. It usually the connection with my clients is the close is the confidence piece that's missing. Like it's they're not showing up fully. They're not, maybe they're speaking on a stage, but they're kind of standing there and being like, this doesn't feel so good, or this doesn't feel like me. So they're either there's a lack of inauthenticity, or they feel like they're just not like quote unquote playing full out and playing as much as they're looking for. So it almost feels like their clothes are holding them back in a way.
I'm reminded. I want to shift gears and just talk about the whole remote work and Zoom and Teams world many of us have evolved into. And I know I frequently get on calls with clients, and by title you can tell they're pretty senior people in their companies and have good spans of responsibility. But yet, even in my own calls, when they show up, I'm going like, and you wore that all day? Really? How many calls have you been on? And there's an extra edge of relaxation that seems to be emerging or oozing into the Zoom world or the Teams world. And I wonder if anybody has ever really thought about that, back to the point of I got passed over, I wasn't deemed a good fit, and they're sensing that there's something about the image that was a factor. But what do you tell people about that appearance on Zoom if that's their life basically now?
Well, two things kind of happen. I tell people aren't going to take you seriously if you don't take yourself seriously. So we need to get dressed for ourselves. Like we really need to go and do the thing. We don't have the commute. We don't have the listening to the podcast where we become like the person that lives in the house to the person who like runs the company. So we really need to make our clothes be part of that commute and really showing up like you're fully present and like you're 100% listening and engaging in someone's in whatever you're working on. So, and our clothes, they used, the industry guideline was 7 seconds of first impression. With all of social media, it is no longer 7 seconds. Like you can scroll in 1 second. People are automatically preconceived notion, judgment. You pop on a screen, your clothes speak before you do. So you're kind of taking yourself out of the game. You're wearing a hoodie. Someone's like looking at their phone, looking at get off this call. So that happens. But then the flip side about it is that I work with a lot of people that work from home, let's say 3 days a week, or they work from home and then they have to go to a conference or they have to go see clients. And when they have to go and leave their house, it's so much harder, the juxtaposition, that it feels like they literally are wearing a costume and it feels very unlike them, but they're thrown into these situations. And those are those situations that matter when they're in front of a client or they're in a networking situation and they're so used to that comfort. So it's just finding the middle ground is actually really, really helpful. So it doesn't feel like you have to put your training wheels back on when you have to go back into, reality, the public eye, or engage with people in person.
Yeah, I can see that. And like I said, I think is interesting. And if people are starting to feel that, they're getting passed over, that maybe that's one place to start is that outward image and things. And I do a lot of work with clients. We do talk about personal branding. I do not get into the fashion part of it and the adornment and accoutrement, aspects of it. I speak to people more in terms of content and subject matter brand imaging that you've got out there. And quick story, an example, I had an executive who was feeling, it happened to be a woman, she was feeling she was getting passed over, and she was pushing for an elevation, and they kept saying, oh yeah, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And like 2 years had gone by and nothing. And so she was kind of frustrated. And I started talking to her, and I said, well, what are you doing external to the company? And I'm saying not in terms of looking for a job, but asserting your brand, asserting your expertise in your field. And she said, not really much. And so we talked about a LinkedIn strategy, and then we migrated to the idea of showing up for conferences and making contacts. Well, in fairly short order, she got invited to 3 different conferences and actually was asked to be on panels at all 3. And she was rubbing elbows with some pretty dominant personalities in these industries. And that really caught fire. They didn't exactly go viral as a post on LinkedIn, but it definitely caught a lot of people's attention. There was a lot of subsequent dialogue and commentary about it, and it was like people were saying to her, "Ooh, you got to do that, and you got to meet him, and you got to talk to him, and wow, And she got a call one day from someone inside the company that said, "You're turning into kind of a big deal." We see your press, and you're making a good name, and thank you for representing us. She was not, shying away from that. She was leveraging her role at her own company and putting it out there as, in parallel with what she was doing personally. And that precipitated the movement to say, well, maybe we need to make this change. We need to get you this title. We need to get you this office.
Because someone else is going to grab you.
Yeah, someone else is going to grab you because you're kind of a big deal. So,
but it really has to do with, I think that there's this idea, and it's ingrained with us. Like I even know when I was talking about when I worked corporately, I worked for, the same company for about 5 years. And I remember telling my dad I was unhappy, and he worked for the same company for like 35 plus years until they were bought by another company. And there's this idea of you are one of many and you want to conform, and you kind of are, being that brand as opposed to being your own brand. When now it's really about people like to work with people, especially like in the pandemic. Like there's this personal edge that we all have, that we know your children's name. We know when you went on vacation. Like we want a personal aspect. We're not robots. There's enough AI out there. Like we need to find a way to go be a human. And one of the ways to do that is through your clothes. Everyone is going to wear a black blazer. If you want to go and wear a blue blazer or a red blazer to an event, you're going to be one of 5. So why not do that and have someone go up to you, sort of conversation with someone, and really build a sense of community as opposed to being one of many. There's enough people out there doing that. So it's really, but to your point, again, it's knowing what your truth is, knowing what it is. So you're not showing up like a different person every single time. It's knowing what your message is, knowing what you're talking about, knowing what you're wearing. So it's like, it feels authentic and it feels you. And you also, the great thing about it, and this is what I tell my clients all the time, be a magnet. Go find your people and attract them to you. But what gets to happen is you get to repel the people that you don't want to work with, that aren't your people, very, very quickly, as opposed to having that like weird, 6-month, year-long relationship and then being like, I don't really like you and you're never going to be my client. So like that sort of thing. Our clothes, our communication, when we start just being us as opposed to being vanilla, it very quickly brings people to us, but also has the people that aren't really our people really start to take a stance back. And we're afraid of that, obviously, because we want everyone to like us, but it draws those other people to you so much quicker.
Yeah. I like that. And I guess my question that comes from that, so how do you talk to people about where their edge ought to be? How far out do they need to get to go? And I've got a gentleman friend who's a longtime attorney, and his trademark is a bow tie. Again, that's kind of corny and very old school, but he picked it a long time ago, and he's really, made the best of it. So kind of the joke is when there's an event and you don't see him on a regular basis, you're always wondering what bow tie he's going to wear that day, and sometimes they're really wild and crazy, almost like a Hawaiian shirt in a little miniature form, or something else. But it makes him memorable.
Mhm. And that's what it is. And I have clients that, wear cowboy boots or wear funky glasses. And every time someone sees funky glasses, they'll get an email. I have a client literally every single time that she sees an article in the Times that has anything to do with style or wearing pajamas or something, she forwards it to me because she knows that's my interest. But it's the same thing. Like if you were to see a funky bow tie, if you were in, I'm making it up, Japan, you're going to take a picture and send it to this guy. It becomes that connection. So what I love to do with my clients is make it much more than clothes, because it is. It's when we get really crystal clear of what our values are and where we can align that with our clothing, that's when it feels like us. So it's really about using our clothes as that nonverbal communication. And it's really understanding, how far we want to take it, because the majority of my clients are in law, do practice law, or are in insurance. Like they work in pretty conservative fields. So if they were to start showing up in a rainbow, there'd be people like, what are you doing? So it's a mix between what feels good to them and also what is appropriate. And like I said, it always starts with something other than clothes. So we can connect it back. So it feels like there's much more of a personal connection there.
To what degree do you see people's personalities impacting their willingness to go out to the edge a little bit?
So I make my clients do some icebreakers, and I make them play some games. Is because clothing and trying new things is a sense of curiosity. And the older and older we get, the further and further we get from being playful and trying new things. So, and some of my clients would call themselves rigid. I normally will find something about them that is not rigid, that's fun and engaging, but they kind of see themselves as someone a little rigid. So once I start breaking down some of those walls and barriers, and they can kind of start having a little bit of fun, that they see that that's possible. But a lot of times they come to me fighting tooth and nail. You are not going to get the black blazer off me. I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one that breaks you. And I also will say to someone, if you I'm not forcing you to be here. Like you came here for a reason. So just do me a favor and try some things. I'm not saying that you need to leave your house, but the first thing is to actually try some new color combinations, try a different way of doing it. A lot of the women that I work with are very hesitant to tuck their shirt in or wear a belt. So I'll say, do me a favor, tuck your shirt in for 5 minutes a day before you leave the house. Like, let's try something. So it all starts with kind of the trying. They get a good reaction, they get a compliment, or they feel good, and then they're willing to try more. And those are the clients that usually never leave me. The ones that were the hardest egg to crack at the very beginning.
Yeah. Usually always the case. Just going back to a comment you made, that wisdom from your mom about know your colors. Talk to us a little bit about the art and science of proper color combination.
Yeah, absolutely. So the really cool thing about getting dressed is it's just math and science. Like people think about it as this fairy tale thing, like dressing to flatter your body type. It's math. It's literally knowing your proportions and how to figure out how to balance them. And color is all science. So it's all things that we probably learned when we were in 6th grade. We just forgot it. And it's really color theory. So one of the first thing that I do with my clients is really get them to understand what are the colors that flatter us, because we all have, either a warm undertone, a cool undertone. So the first step is really knowing what looks good on you, because again, you're much more likely to try something if you know it's going to work than not work. But then really understanding, what to wear with it, because the knee-jerk reaction for most of my clients is like, okay, you're telling me to wear blue, but I'll wear it with black. Like, so it's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna wear prints, I'm gonna wear it with black. So it's really then showing them what within the color theory, or what are the 2 or 3 other colors to wear it with. And then from there, that's where you can start either being conservative, where it's like, okay, maybe you're wearing gray and a pink, or maybe you're wearing navy blue and burgundy. But if you want to take it a step further, you can maybe wear green and blue. So it's really, that's where you could actually start to to really step outside of the box or keep it super conservative. So what I love to just teach my clients is really, number one, to understand what looks good on them. And that goes back to the 80s, color me beautiful. A lot of women got like their colors done, but then knowing what to do with that information, because it's just like anything. Like you could sit there and you could take a course online and someone can give you a piece of paper, but it's actually knowing what to do with that information. And we know to what degree that you want to step out of the comfort zone when it comes to it.
Right. Yeah, there's no denying that based on skin tone, hair color, all of that some things just don't work, and you get this automatic, and it might go so far as to say one of my favorite challenge phrases when I'm talking to business leaders. There's a term or word that comes from sales. It says a confused mind says no. And I can imagine people showing up with the wrong blend and mix of things, and everybody goes, "Ooh, that's confusing. What are you?" And so the natural reaction is no. I don't want to engage. I don't want to continue this discussion. I just want to find an opportunity to exit the moment.
And it's the same thing with Zoom. Like if your LinkedIn picture looked you were all suited up, and then all of a sudden you got on the camera, on the screen, and you were a completely different person, the person's taking 3 minutes to figure out, am I on the call with the right person? Like it's just like, we all like to put people in boxes. Like if the box doesn't fit, we're running away. It's fight or flight.
Well, speaking of LinkedIn and those image things, many years ago, and a lot of my listeners know this story, I ran a nonprofit organization that was helping job seekers back during the great crash of '08. And for about 4 years after that, this organization coached about 4,500 people through job change. And so we were doing everything in terms of image and branding and resume writing and profile making on LinkedIn. And and again, go back, we're talking now 15 years, go back in mindset 15 years ago. I had people that showed up, they had never thought about building a LinkedIn profile. And we got to the part about putting your picture on there, and they go, "Oh, I don't want them to see who I am. I want to be able to have the discussion." And I said, and I would tell people, "Oh, so you're going to wait till that moment for them to see you and decide they don't want to talk to you?" I said, "Why don't you get that out of the way sooner? Put a nice picture up there. It doesn't have to be uber professional, but it needs to be nice. It needs to be consistent with the brand you're trying to build, and put it out there. If somebody has a bias of some kind, or age, gender, race, any of those biases, and they see your picture and disqualify you for that, well, that's good news. You don't want to work for them anyway."
And also, by the way, the biggest question mark is what's going on, what's wrong with your profile if there's not a picture? Like it seems like there's something wrong.
Well, that's the evolution now. Back then it was a Wild West, but now it is. And I know a lot of recruiters that will say, when I'm flipping LinkedIn, if I don't see a picture, I scroll on. I'm not even going to read your stuff if you don't have the willingness to share with me who and what you are, in a picture form. Just disqualified right off the top. So I think that's again, it's a mind shift of where we are in the way we look at this stuff and think about it. But now I could easily see that while all of this is wide open in that way, there are still people that probably struggle with what to put up there.
Yep. And it's also like, I've gone through many coaching sessions with photographers about like, what's the right photo, what's the not right photo, what should have in the background. I definitely have changed my photo multiple times. And I could always go back and just say, there's going to be a lot of people wearing black blazers. If you want to stick out from the crowd and someone to stop the scroll, because that's ultimately what we're looking for, is someone to just connect for more than 2 seconds, is to do something that is a little bit different and a little bit out there. And it's the same thing I've even seen, with the uptick of pictures and graphics on LinkedIn in the past year. Is there's some pictures that people are taking and just putting them up there because now people are saying, you need to have an image up there for someone to stop. People are no longer looking at text. I'm like, oh, this is the image that you're posting up Like it's almost better to not put an image than put that image up there. So we really need to realize that we are visual creatures and we're visual beings, and those pictures don't go away. So just thinking about it from a sense of control. We all like to control, what we're putting out there, what the images that we're putting out there. And when you kind of do this work in advance, you take the decision-making process out of there. Because like in our minds, we don't want to get dressed for Zoom because we're just in our house. This is so easy. I want to be comfortable. I'm not saying you need to go wear a tie on Zoom, but if you just have 3 or 4, shirts or outfits that are ready, the guesswork gets to get taken out of it, as opposed to you having to scramble. Oh, I didn't realize this was a video podcast, or I didn't realize. Just have the work done already. It makes it so much easier than kind of feeling like you have this panic struggle that happens a lot of times.
Yeah. I know there's lots of memes and videos that have been done about that phenomenon. And one of my favorites, there's a lady sitting at her computer. She's got her hair pulled back with some kind of scrunchie in it, and she's got her cat in her lap, and she's talking, and then all of a sudden, and there's bowls of snacks all around her. It's just a mess. She's in a tank top, really casual. Looks like she just came back from the gym, and then she goes, "Oh crap, we're going to be on camera." And she goes, wait. She clicks, and then there's this scramble to go get her blazer and throw the cat out and clean up the junk and pull her hair down and do this quick 2-second makeover, to get back and get ready to be on the camera. So, to your point, why do that? Why not just pick a spot and dress for that day? And you may or may not be on a camera call, but if you are, then great, you're there, and you're now consistently appearing with your brand and your value statement.
Exactly. And it goes back to just those brand guidelines. Like it's just like a playbook. Like it's not like, it's just like how Target, Coca-Cola, Apple, everyone, like you just know what font, what color, just kind of, figure it out once. So it doesn't have to feel like it's guesswork all the time. And it makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. So when you begin your work with a client, you mentioned a little bit of game playing and some other things. What else is involved in kind of landing on that solution?
A lot is for everyone. It's different. And that's why I went and took the neurocoaching certification, because what most of us don't realize is a lot of the ways that we're showing up, getting dressed, our childhood affects it. It's like we're sometimes dressing the 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old version of ourselves. If we went to church every Sunday, or we got passed down clothes, or we were told that something was up with our body, like we're still dressing that person. So a lot of times I will have to kind of check in with my clients and just kind of have a little bit of questions about, what are some things that you notice when you get dressed? Where are you getting stuck? So that's where some of like the coaching will come in, is just figuring that all out. And then also another thing an exercise that I really love doing with my clients is like, imagine it done. Like we are so in scarcity mode. We're so reactive. But like if we were to be having, let's say, a cup of coffee 3 years from now, and you're doing your big audacious goal, whether it was a TED Talk, or whether it was you made partner, or whether it was you left your company and you went and started your own, like how is that person thinking, feeling, acting, getting dressed? And let's start creating that person, as opposed to being so reactive, because we all have a closet full of clothes that has happened to us, especially during the pandemic. Like how many suits do people have that they haven't worn in years? How many like college sweatshirts do they have? Like, let's forget that that's there, and let's actually figure out how that powerful person dresses, and then really make your wardrobe work for you, as opposed to feeling like it's a result of the things that have happened to you.
Yeah, I like that. And, it is so much part of that story we tell ourselves. And I know in my own coaching work, I spend a lot of time with executives just really challenging the story that's going on. And I love your vision of that future person. If all this came together and all the goals were hit and the proverbial magic wand was waved and poof, you were there, what would that look like? And let's be that person, start assimilating what that person is doing and has been doing, and let that be the vision of where you want to go.
Exactly. Because that person's not going to say I have to lose 20 pounds before I do this.
Right.
Because I get a lot of that. People come to me, I've signed up to work with you, but just letting you know, I'm going to lose about like 40 pounds before this is over. Like, that's not right.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Like, how long have we been working on that one?
Not a bad goal to have if you're
Right.
actually going to be intentional and go do something about it. But yeah, so, and how many people gained their own COVID-19, as in 19 extra pounds while the thing was going on? I certainly know a lot of folks who did suffer with that. And boy, that was, I'm glad we're sort of at a place you can think about some of that in a rearview mirror. We're definitely gone are the days of Tiger King binging on the sofa, so.
I was just at Universal Studios for spring break. And so they opened like a new ride, the Mario ride, that was very busy. And I turned to my husband, I'm like, remember we had to stand 6 feet apart? Like, we were like literally a sardine can. Get closer. Everyone needs to get in this room. And I'm like, can we have our 6 feet again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely strange times. Well, Melanie, I think we're about up on time here. Thank you so much for sitting in. I think this has really been great. Tell folks the best way to get a hold of you.
Absolutely.
LinkedIn. Okay.
I have a website, and I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, but definitely I spend a lot of time and offer a lot of content on LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn Lives. So my goal is for everyone to just find small ways that they could show up with confidence and just keep the ball rolling.
Great. Well, as always, folks, we're going to have those links in the show notes here. So drop down in the descriptions and check it out. You'll find Melanie's information, can reach back to her. But one last time, Melanie, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Well, folks, we are going to wrap it up. As always, I want to remind you that we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. If you're listening right now on your favorite audio streaming, hop over there, check out the video, get a look at Melanie's setup here and things she's got going on. But think about, how you do want to enhance your own personal brand. And I know perhaps a lot of what we talked about sounded like we were talking to the ladies, but, guys, we all have a challenge too, to make a decision about how we want to show up. And like it or not, it is a factor, and it's something that it may not be the only deciding factor, but it sure may be one of the contributing factors to a decision that a prospective client or a future employee may make about looking at you and deciding, do I want to work with that? And like it or not, that is reality. So think about it. See if this might be a help for getting you to the next level. So with that, we're going to sign off, say goodbye. Hope to see you again real soon. Take care. Okay.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.